podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
Daniel, that's it. We're good again. United are back, baby.
What's the team?
Never doubted them. Not once in the past 9 years. I always knew it'd end up. No,
All is forgiven.
All is forgiven. Yeah, sorry for everything we said about the Joel Glazer. He's really a lovely man. Anyway, funny game, wasn't it? Because actually United weren't that good, really, but gutted out a 1-0 win.
That's it. It's sort of what you want to see in some ways, isn't it? That it didn't go how they wanted it to. They persevered. They've managed to produce a telling moment of quality, and they hung on pretty well in the end.
Yeah, it was a great goal. I mean, I'm assuming I'm going to give Diogo Dalot the benefit of the doubt and say he meant that pass.
He wanted to do that, yeah.
Yeah, because, I have my suspicions, but and a fantastic finish from Bruno, who's been spending much of the last sort of year shanking them everywhere, but actually
it was the way
managed to get one in the corner.
Onto it was very nice. The way he would kind of... I mean, it wasn't... I'm going to compare it to a goal that was much, much better that was just scored by Alan Saint-Maximin in injury time for Newcastle, but the way they were similar were the kind of the momentum for the strike came because they stepped into it, and it meant that they were then almost able to cushion the ball whilst retaining the power that they needed to score. And obviously Saint-Maximin's goal was a better goal, but it was a similar kind of skill, that ability to take a step forward whilst keeping your eye on the ball and applied laces was excellent.
Yeah. I mean, it came in one of the few periods that United was sort of on top in the game, because most of the second half it was kind of Southampton running a show really, and United had to defend well. A different game than the Liverpool game, obviously, but still United under a bit of pressure. But the goal came when United were on top, and they held out. And again, I guess Malacia and Martinez and Varane at the back were good again, weren't they? I mean, had to defend differently, but actually competent defending for almost all of the game.
Where you're sitting there and you don't really expect them to concede.
Yeah.
That it felt like Martinez in particular was going to make sure that Southampton didn't score, and that sort of sounds like a bit of a silly thing to say because they did come quite close to scoring on a couple of occasions, and the fact that they didn't wasn't because of Martinez's defending.
True.
But there's a level of calmness that United have with Martinez. Malacia not so much, but he has that kind of frantic quality to his defending, which also I feel like it makes strikers feel rushed because they know that he's likely to make a challenge of some sort.
Yeah. I think all the concerns about Martinez's physicality, you can just kind of forget those. I mean, he's almost over physical, isn't he? I mean, he's always tight and always on his man. Malacia, busy all of the time.
But what happens when he has to mark Chris Wood?
Yeah. I do like Gabriel Agbonlahore's 15 minutes this week where he's just doubling down on his dumb opinion. But that's what he's paid to do on TalkSport.
The thing is even if he's right, and let's be real, how many times do we think Gabby Agbonlahore has seen Martinez play?
Yeah, well,
probably
twice,
as many times as we have.
Yeah.
But so deciding that you're then in a position to know how good someone is just so ludicrous. And even in those games where United got beat, it wasn't like it was constantly getting towered above at the back post.
No.
He wasn't getting Trevor Sinclair and Patrice Evra.
Yeah.
It wasn't like that. And
no, there was the one where he sort of get caught under the ball and didn't jump for it. But that was again not being out jumped. That was nothing to do with him being 5'9".
He didn't.
Yeah,
which is not something he seems to do very often. And he's been more or less faultless since then.
Yeah. I have no concerns, honestly. I mean, look, we'll find out whether he's actually good over the long term, but like he's very, very busy, actually. I think the thing that, if I was a manager, coach looking at him, is that he's always active and he's going to give away fouls. But he hasn't done so far, so maybe that's just nonsense as well. Anyway, it's just nice to see United being competent.
He plays with an intensity that hasn't been there.
Yeah,
trying to do things quickly, trying to do things with purpose, trying to do things with conviction. He's untainted by the disgrace that we've seen over the last few years. He's used to playing in a team that wins. He knows what the manager wants from him, and he doesn't fuck about.
Yeah.
And that's the thing with both Lindelof and Maguire, is they are prone to fucking about. Like
Quite a lot.
They don't evince... Is that the word I want? I think I mean the mentality that you would expect from an elite level centre back. Like, they're not always in a rush. They're not proactive. They sort of wait for things to happen usually, and then try and see if they can deal with them. And sometimes they can, and sometimes they can't. Whereas Martinez is trying to stop things from becoming an issue by dealing with them early doors.
That's right. Harry Maguire was referenced in Duncan Castle's truly magnificent piece in the Sunday Times. Just a absolute work of art. this piece of journalism as one of the reasons why Ronaldo is so disappointed with United. And I have to say, it was the only part of the article I was like, yeah, all right, I can get that.
I don't think it's not difficult to understand why Ronaldo was disappointed with United, but the way he completely absolves himself of all of it is nonsense, obviously. And the way he thinks that sort of everything is been structured to go against him, it just isn't fair. He's going to scream until he's thick.
Yeah. It's elite levels of so entitlement, pleasant, isn't it?
Yeah, to see him stamping his feet so fruitlessly and so powerlessly. Yeah, unlucky, mate.
I know, for that reason, I can't quite decide whether I'd be happier with him pissing off somewhere else, which is like basically what I'd like, or staying and having to sell for a season, being forced into this terrible position of being paid 25 million netto, as George Mendes might call it.
Can we read a couple of lines out of this?
Yeah, please do. Please do.
Add insult to injury of suffering the worst league finish of his career. He is not a football team.
Yeah.
The club also expected him to accept a 25% pay cut written into his contract for a season without Champions League football. It wasn't his fault United hadn't qualified. Reasons, Ronaldo. Why should he be penalised? Because he signed the contract? Like, it's just absolutely nuts.
What we need is a reading of this article by that dude from the Royal Shakespeare Company who did the Ryan Giggs poem. That's what we need.
Ronaldo is understood to have been unimpressed with Ten Hag's attempt to shift responsibility to the players and their physical output in London. So what, the players are not responsible for this? The Dutchman, lovely elegant variation there, who never resorted to such antediluvian disciplinary measures across his 5 seasons at Ajax, made it known that he was now open to selling Ronaldo and hasn't started him since. Some of Ten Hag's new charges would be happy to see, inverted commas, CR7 depart, letting journalists know that Ronaldo's exit would liberate and allow them to express themselves. Their travails working alongside a footballer who set record after record in their sport by seeking to win every game and every title have elicited limited sympathy. The best thing some of these players will do in their entire careers is to be able to say that they played beside Cristiano, noted one elite coach. The whole thing is just fucking nuts. A footballer who set record after record in their sport. So fucking what?
Yeah.
Bobby Charlton says some records. Alfredo Di Stefano says some records. Are we going to reanimate him and try and buy him and play him for United? It's just...
Well, I mean, to be fair, if they could get the clicks, they probably would, wouldn't they? So, yeah, just stunning piece of stuff coming out of the pen of Jorge Mendes there.
Eternally professional, he is girding himself for one more year at United and to make the best he can of it. Deary me.
I'm so looking forward to Cristiano Ronaldo coming on in the 87th minute as United lose 1-0 at Ammonia Nicosia. It's going to be a beautiful...
You do sort of feel that for as long as he's around, there will be the temptation to pick him for a match he shouldn't.
Yep.
And it cost us points.
Yeah, I know, absolutely. Yeah, so for that reason, it's on the net balance of being cruel to Cristiano Ronaldo and making him suffer the indignity of a 25% pay cut. By the way, I think just on that point, I think actually they're written into the contracts as bonuses for being in the Champions League, not pay cuts. So just a minor thing there, but still. Anyway, the indignity of having to play the Europa versus getting him out, I'm just about on the fence of getting him out.
Yeah, you can see, but if I knew for sure that he'd just be an unused sub every game, and then I would constantly be sending him to warm up. Now then, you're all right, mate, sit down again. That would give me a lot of what we call knuckers, where I come from.
Yeah.
A great deal of enjoyment, pleasure and pride. But yeah, he does just need to go. But again, the problem is no one wants him.
They really don't. I mean, the stories of him perhaps going back to Sporting going around.
Well, Duncan
I don't know how they could afford
totally
him.
kiboshed that one. All around him acknowledged the difficulty of securing a suitable move. Few football clubs now spend big on players beyond their 20s. The coaching fashion is from relentless pressers, and a year alongside Solskjaer, Rangnick and Maguire has tarnished a stellar reputation. Has it really? Does anyone think he was any less good at his peak because he plays with Harry Maguire now?
Well, that's right.
There is a real sense, as opposed to a counterfeit or fake sense, that Ronaldo may be stuck with last August's poor choice. Dearie me. And as for Sporting, it says here, a return to his first club has been much discussed in Portugal. The coach has yet his opposition to a transfer become known to the local media. Already publicly critical of Sporting's decision to sell Mateus Nunes to Wolverhampton Wanderers, Ruben Amorim has intimated that he might walk out on his contract where Ronaldo signed. Ronaldo is understood to find the posturing of a coach whose team has just won one of 3 Liga Portugal matches this season laughable.
They should just appoint Ronaldo manager. That would solve all problems.
So this particular thing is just the way that sourcing would have occurred. Someone has said, Ronaldo finds this laughable. Like, how many people has this gone through? Is Ronaldo actually even involved in this? Or has it been decided that it's something he should think is laughable? Or is he genuinely sitting there laughing?
I mean, I like the latter picture. I have to
Or does
say.
he just consider it laughable? He's not actually laughing, but he considers that it contains within it the prospect for laughter to be enjoyed as consequence.
We need a meme. We need in his house of mirrors. Is he still? I'm assuming he's in a rented house in Manchester. But the house he had in Madrid in that documentary a few years back, where every single wall was a mirror. Absolutely magnificent. So he could see himself in all sides at all times. We need a repeat of that documentary and see if he's actually laughing. Anyway, there was a game yesterday. United were all right, just about.
They still have that issue of getting the ball through midfield, and
they do. And Casemiro is not going to solve that, and it looks like there's not going to be an option in the market to solve that.
I think he'll solve some of it, but obviously Madrid were able to control games because he was getting the ball for Kroos and Modric to then
do their stuff.
And the thing that we had on Monday night, we didn't really have yesterday, is tempo. And Casemiro can help with the tempo because he's a player who speeds the game up.
Yep.
But Casemiro, Eriksen, Bruno isn't that. It's a midfield that will be able to do some good stuff. But it doesn't feel like it's a midfield that's going to properly be able to dictate the pattern of games.
No, I mean, Eriksen looks like he's going to play deep this season, basically. And I'm not sure that's exactly why he was signed, but they haven't got that second central midfielder, so that's the role he's going to play. He's going to be playing at 8 with Bruno at 10, I think, for most of the season.
Yeah, I think Bruno's probably going to play a bit deeper as well, but it should be possible really because you've got Eriksen who can move forward, and then in theory you're going to get more out of Sancho. Although I guess it'll be interesting to see what happens with Sancho now that we appear to have
I presume Sancho's going to go to the left, and there'll be some competition for for places over there as well, which there needs to be. Elanga and Sancho switched for this game, so Sancho was mostly on the left and Elanga on the right.
Yeah,
I don't know why. Presumably because they really wanted to make something of Elanga's pace behind Alexander-Arnold against Liverpool, which worked. For a lot.
Yeah, it did. I mean, I think that Sancho he needs just that little bit of edge that will... Games still pass him by a little bit, and he was involved in the goal. He's still more than capable of being involved in great moments, as we've seen twice this week. But in terms of not just affecting the outcome of games, but affecting the actual passage of games.
Sure.
For United, at least, he's got some work to do. And what I was going to say on the midfield about controlling the midfield is perhaps as Ten Hag's manner and method is inculcated further in the players, the fullbacks coming into midfield will allow them to control midfield a little bit more, and maybe that's so. Particularly if Sancho moves over to the left, and with Antony on the right, you've got two wingers who want to come in field that will probably help you control midfield a little bit. But just a right back would make such a difference, because it means that Antony can come in field, and you've got, if you have an attacking threat, because with the money that we've spent on Antony, we could basically have bought the goalkeeper of our choice, and the right back of our choice.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, or a midfielder and a right back, or pick two.
A midfielder, I'm willing to semi-accept the fact that the midfielder and the striker that we want is not to get the right one is not something that we can do at this point of the transfer window. I guess I would accept that. Like, he wanted De Jong, he wanted Nunez, or whatever it is. Like, if you said to me, here is that Antony money to go and buy a centre forward, do I actually? I mean, it's not my job to be a scout, but we'd like to think that we're aware of who the £100 million strikers in world football are.
Yeah.
We don't. And who would you go and get? Like, Osimhen is a punt. He's someone who looks like a good player. Not sure he looks like a brilliant player. Then with that sort of money, you're then that's it.
Yeah.
So I don't mind. I do worry about us getting enough goals, but I understand why we're not getting a striker now, and I understand why we're probably not getting in fielder now. We want the De Jong, not happening, and what can you do?
Yeah.
A right back in particular feels like it would just enable us to stretch the play so much more and not allow teams just to forget about one side, because one of the reasons we've seen so little from Sancho for United is because he's had no help.
Yeah, well, it looks like that's not going to happen. Antony's going to have to put up incredible numbers to justify the fee. I mean, it's clear that United are basically paying a 50% premium for doing this deal so late in the window. It appears to be the price quoted early in the window as well. So,
that's funny, that.
Well done, United. Well done. I mean, look, I'm going to opine, even though I've hardly seen him play, really. I mean, there'll be people in Holland who've seen him a lot more than me. But the prevailing opinion is this is a big fee for this player. I mean, it's about 50% of Ajax's annual revenue, equivalent to, and his numbers aren't awesome, really. So he's going to have to do better numbers in a stronger league, in probably a less good team, which seems like a combination that's unlikely.
I mean, I guess the idea is that he gives you something a little bit different.
He does, and he carries the ball really well. I mean, again, not being an expert scout, but it is going to be fun watching him.
And also, Ten Hag has signed two players who we didn't really know that well.
Yeah.
And we can tell already that they're both good.
Yeah.
So maybe it feels a little bit like he's earned the right to this one. But what I was also thinking was, we still don't really know what actually happened with Timber. Because we know the United wanted him, but if we'd have signed him, then do we not sign Martinez?
It's hard to tell, isn't it?
Because then I was thinking, gosh, Timber must be a player. Because we've seen, though, we went for him before Martinez.
Seemed like it, although he plays a lot on the right. So, I mean, it's not certain that what he was going to be bought for is to play through the centre, right? So, hard to know. Yeah, I mean, I guess, unless there's some madness going to happen in the next 4 or 5 days, it seems like that's the window done, and this is the squad for the season. And it's a competent squad, and I think we know what Ten Hag wants to play. He's not going to be able to play the exact system he wants with the players he's got. He won't be able to control the game quite in that way. But he seems like he's a pragmatic coach as well. I mean, if you just looking at that Liverpool game, this is not what Van Gaal would have done, which is like, you play my system in every game, doesn't matter what the situation is. That was United putting men behind the ball and trying to break, and so that just looks like a coach who's going to play a system for the moment, and maybe he'll have to compromise on some of his ideals, so in order to get United
fine.
good.
I mean, what I'm liking about him is also, like, when he talks to the press, he seems to speak with quite a lot of clarity.
Yeah,
and he's not bothered.
He's very abbreviated, isn't he? So.
Yeah. Like, he's not. But the stuff that he says, like in the press conference before the game, it felt like almost everything he said was bang on. Where he's talking about the quality of players that United want, like they're not wasting money on players. They're going to make sure they get the right players. Refusing to answer what's his name, Cotterill's question was also a nice touch.
Yeah.
And the only part, like one of the parts of the Fergie tribute act that actually it might have done Ole some good to invoke was that kind of toughness, rather than trying to be everyone's buddy.
Mm-hmm.
Ten Hag clearly isn't trying to do that, and it feels like he's got a good idea of what he's trying to achieve, and he has a good understanding of the players. And again, at half time, it seemed like he made some decent tactical changes that enabled United to get on the ball a bit more in the second half by kind of pulling Southampton's defenders around a little bit more, and kind of players coming deep and other players coming behind them to fill in the gaps. And I mean, the players might have worked it out for themselves, but it seems fairly unlikely.
Yeah, and the substitutes just about worked. You brought Ronaldo on for, was it Sancho?
Wasn't
came
sure.
on.
No, that one wasn't sure.
I'm not sure about that one, and then took Eriksen off again. Well, I guess there's question marks about Eriksen's fitness. Can he? I mean, I can't remember. That was really late in the game, wasn't it? So maybe that was just like seeing out the last 5 minutes of the game or something like that. So I mean, the subs are okay. There was one great moment where they had the ball, and I think it was Marcus Rashford was going through the middle. It was like a straight through ball was required, and Rashford would have been through 1-on-1, and Ronaldo poked it out wide, and I was like, what are you doing? And then ran through the middle himself. So I think we know what he was trying to go for there. Classic Ronaldo. Anyway, it's another 3 points. Needed it. The crisis is over, and we can wait till, what is it next? Leicester, then Arsenal, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, so
Leicester on Thursday night.
Yeah, I mean, that might be the one. I think maybe we might see a bit of Maguire for that one.
Oof.
Just to avoid Varane Thursday and Sunday.
That's right, yeah. I mean, yes, we haven't seen Varane play that many back-to-back games for United. He's always getting injured, isn't he? So,
but I mean,
if he can't handle that load, then yeah, maybe we will see Harry.
What Ten Hag was saying was that they built him up slowly in pre-season for that reason. So if that's what's going on, then fair enough. And I hope that I hope that we do get to see Varane, but also we do have to handle him carefully, because otherwise we're making do.
Yeah, Leicester aren't in a good spot really at the moment. They obviously have done no business over the summer. It looks like they're selling Wesley Fofana to Chelsea for huge money. I mean, he's a nice player. He stopped defending, which is really kind of interesting. Look at Fofana's numbers. After he broke his leg, he didn't defend anymore. He just didn't do anything. Like like the pressures, the tackles, the intercept, everything dropped. Everything. So it's a big risk by Chelsea. I guess they need the player. But Leicester in some trouble. Look like they're kind of treading water as a club. Brendan Rodgers, is he long for this world? Well, he's probably a few years for the world, but long for
Will he
for the
get
Premier
fired
League.
before
I'm not sure.
Stephen?
Oh, that's a good question, isn't it? Oh, it's coming soon though. The Gerrard sacking's coming soon. And I think we should all enjoy the moment.
I mean, yeah, I know that he sort of did, not that he did well to last out the summer, but to me, if I'm a Villa fan or a Villa chairman, I'm thinking, you don't look much cop to me. So this has already felt like a last warning situation, because already spent some money, like they looked after him with getting him the players that he wants, and other than trying hard, there's no massive sense in what he expects from them.
No, and they're a club under the new ownership with ambition. Yeah, they're spending money. They want to push for the upper parts of the Premier League, and whether that's really their rightful place, Villa or not, I don't know, but that's what they want, and they got the big name in, the big I am in Steven Gerrard in to do the job, and they've got a terrible record under him. They lose 50% of their games, and that doesn't seem to match the ambition of their owners. So Leicester, on the other hand, I mean, they're not in a great spot. What did they get? What was this weekend's? They drew this weekend.
Well,
they lost to Chelsea.
Yeah, they lost. They haven't bought anyone.
They haven't bought anyone, and they're selling one of their better players.
They're selling for fine. Tielemans still might leave. Yeah,
he's in the last year of his contract. I mean, United could take a punt on him. I'm not sure he's the answer, but
I mean, he's not massively distant from the answer in terms of what he does, but
he's the type of player.
Yeah,
whether
exactly.
He's good enough.
But is he quite good enough? Yeah. He's someone that is better, might be better than what there is, but probably isn't as good as where you want to get to, and that makes him someone I would prefer not to sign.
Yeah, I agree. Generally speaking, I think United go for the best player they can in that position, and that would be a compromise. Anyway, yeah, Leicester spent most of the game with an extra man because what's his name? Conor Gallagher got himself sent off with a couple of dumb tackles. So
it feels like he might have to leave.
Conor Gallagher,
yeah,
to get enough games. Yeah,
just because also they've signed Carney Chukwuemeka.
Yeah,
on like a 75-year contract or something.
Yeah.
So it's hard to see what Gallagher's future is because he's someone who you want barging into the box and doesn't look like that's what Chelsea's need is.
It's not how they play. I mean, he looks like a Lampard type player, doesn't he? Making those third man runs, scoring goals rather than a controller in midfield. So anyway,
is he a Tory?
Is he a Tory, Conor Gallagher?
Yeah, I feel every time someone compares someone to Frank Lampard, that is what I find myself saying.
I wonder whether Lampard's long for this world as well. I mean, they got a draw against Brentford, Everton, but they're pretty dreadful, aren't they?
The suits at Everton will know that he's in a slightly invidious position. The club is a mess, and it needs a lot of work doing to it, and he's obviously not the man to do it, don't get me wrong, he's not. But for them to have decided that he is, probably would take something quite significant for them to now decide that he isn't, because as I said, like, he's not been given loads to work with, so they can pretend that he might be the answer for quite a little bit longer. I would say I think we can enjoy this one for quite a while longer. Yeah,
Leicester bottom of the table. Didn't realise it was that correct. Draw against Brentford, lost to Arsenal, lost to Southampton. They won on penalties, was it, against Stockport in the League Cup? Good stuff there. And then obviously lost to Chelsea yesterday. After us, they've got Brighton, who obviously got a good win against Leeds at the weekend. So not looking awesome for Leicester at the moment. I wonder when Brenton might just quit.
I mean, that would probably cost him a few squid, and I wonder, like those teeth don't pay for themselves. I'd be surprised. It would require for him to decide that he couldn't take them any further, or to think, well, because Leicester was previously a good job.
Yeah. Well, they were the sort of archetype of a well-run club that
was always the phrase, wasn't it? Did
good business in the transfer market. Their scouting system seemed to work. They uncovered players for a decent fee and then sold a big one every year in order to make the books work. Spent all the money on this training ground where they've got masseuses and mindfulness rooms and got a nice new stadium and they've
sort of been overtaken in that aspect by Brighton.
Yeah,
who now have the young progressive manager in the crap stadium, like the crap plastic stadium, and
and the data-led scouting and all of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do you reckon is going on at United's scouting department then? Because they spent an awful lot of money getting a big team in, and this was to modernise United's recruitment, and basically they've gone, we'll buy whatever Ten Hag wants this summer for whatever money it's going to cost.
I guess the stat that they probably weren't ready.
Yeah.
To say, right, because the hadn't been worked with the manager, so what he needed hadn't been conveyed to them because he probably didn't know himself yet. And then I guess him saying, "Get me a right back," and then they return with, they scout a Brazilian right backs and then return with a couple from the Premier League or whatever. That hasn't been the time for that to happen yet. So I think we can. It is easy to be scathing about United's scouting department, but they would say that if it is crap, we don't yet know because the restructure hasn't had time to take effect. And I'm sure that the plan from now on is that the scouting department will constantly be looking for players who fit in with the particular way of playing. The idea will be that any manager who comes in after Ten Hag will play a similar kind of football, so it won't be a matter of there being players he wants to get rid of or players that the recruitment department come up with if he thinks, I don't want that player, because the style will be the same, so the needs of the manager will be roughly the same too.
That would be the plan, wouldn't it? It's always hard to think United have some kind of long-term strategy and plan here. Anyway, Leicester, you're probably right about the Varane switch for Maguire. That seems like that's managing him for Arsenal on the Sunday makes a lot of sense. And then of the other changes, maybe we'll see Casemiro start. I mean, he got a few minutes.
I think we probably will. We might see Fred as well for Eriksen, something like that. It depends probably what team Ten Hag wants to play for Leicester. But for Arsenal, sorry. But I think maybe a couple of those players who will play against Arsenal we won't see. So it'd be maybe like a midfield of Casemiro, Bruno, Fred, something like that.
Yeah. I mean, Bruno plays every game, whatever, and then burns out at the end of the season. So we'll see. But I don't think they'll manage him for the Leicester game, not this early in the season. But yeah, Fred could come in. Yeah, it's hard to understand quite where Fred fits in a Ten Hag system. I mean, he's tried him in a slightly deeper position, obviously doesn't. And is he going to be the number 8, or is he going to be Eriksen's deputy at 8? Maybe
something like that.
Like that. Yeah, not exactly the controller, is he? But
he will be someone. Because the thing is, if you don't play him in a game like Liverpool at home, where your whole game plan is about recovering the ball high up the pitch, that's basically what Fred does quite well. If your whole game plan is arranged around that and you still don't pick Fred, then yeah, he probably isn't playing that much football this season.
Yeah. All right, that's Leicester. And then final few days of the window. I mean, I wonder whether we might see some exits as well. I mean, they still haven't found anywhere for Phil Jones to go. I mean, he needs something. He's not obviously not going to play at all.
Yeah, find the door.
He just needs to find a door, yeah. Bruno left. Not Bruno. Bailly left, so that's one done. Brandon Williams probably needs to find. I mean, he obviously got injured pre-season.
It depends, because if Wan-Bissaka goes, he's deputy right back.
Well, that's true. Is Wan-Bissaka going to go?
I'm sure they'd like him to, but there has to be a team that are willing to pay whatever it's going to cost. Because
yeah, well, it's most likely in that case a loan, isn't it? And then a couple of youngsters, Palestri and Ahmad, they're clearly not going to play much this season.
Ahmad's
so they
got to be one of the most baffling signings any football club has ever made.
Well, actually, United's famous scouting department said to spunk 40 million euros on that kid.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know it's 40 plus add-ons, but when you think
20 plus 20 or something like that.
What we could have done with that money.
I know. Yeah, a little bit bonkers. So, yeah, maybe some exits. I don't imagine there'll be any more incomings beyond Antony. Dubravka, Jesus. Yeah, a second keeper, yeah. Another mad one. How is the Henderson doing this weekend? We're recording
Not
as
great
Forest,
for the goal.
Forest are losing at Spurs as we record.
So Harry Kane scored not his typical goal, but it wasn't an untypical Harry Kane goal in that he sort of put it away with an early hit from 20 yards or so. And I would say that of all the strikers I've seen, I can't think of many that are better than him from sort of 15 to 22 yards. So he doesn't put his foot through it. He just gets a shot off quickly enough so that the goalkeeper can't move. And it was sort of one where the direction was good. It went to the corner. It kind of loped and bobbled a bit so that you kind of feel like a serious keeper would have found a way of saving it. But it was a pretty accurate strike. But yeah.
All right. Well, guess that's it for this week. We've got less to say about it when United actually win. So we can't bitch and moan, which has been the standard tone for the pod for the last however many years. It's a strange feeling, isn't it? This United team might actually be competent. So,
just even the way that they were able to bring Casemiro on to see it out.
Yeah,
and he really did
assert
himself.
He got stuck in straight away, yeah, which was good to see, which I'm sure he will be doing this season.
Well, yeah, and he has that knack of getting away with it.
Yeah, look, if there's a bit of spite to this United side now, Casemiro's there and the Butcher, Martinez is at the back. Great. We haven't seen that for a long time. So powder puff, this group of wasters. Normally, if they've got a few people who want to get stuck in, hopefully that'll encourage a few of the others to get stuck in as well and understand what it's like to win football matches. So, seem to have lost that habit, but maybe we're getting it back. Okay, for the interview this week, I'm talking to Stuart James Quigley. Do you always go by the three names there, or... Stuart, fine.
It is something I've always used. Maybe there is something to do with the fact that the middle name makes it all sound a little bit more regal, but for whatever reason, that's what I've always used. It's not as if as well, my second name is that sort of common as well, so I could probably get away with just the two, but I've always used the three.
Alrighty, well, Stuart has written a book called The Cornerstone Collection, which is timed nicely for the 30th anniversary of the Premier League, sort of telling the story of the Premier League through 45 players. And
yes, 45 players.
Yeah, go on.
And also, it's 45 players and every club that's ever played in the Premier League. So the scope is as large as it can be, even though it's... Well, when I originally started, I had a spreadsheet of about, I think, 1,000 different players, and to narrow that down to just 45. Some are easier than others. Some clubs are really easy to narrow down who you want to talk about, but it's the ones that aren't as... When you've got as vast a selection as like Manchester United, all the players that have played for them... It's really more of a case of why you're picking those players.
Yeah. Well, we'll get on to United in a bit. I wanted to start with the sort of premise, really. How did you come up with that premise, and why did you want to write the book?
Well, as all good ideas are created, it was born of a night of a few adult beverages, and myself and a few friends. Have you seen the film Memento?
Yeah.
Yeah, after a few drinks, we came up with this idea for a podcast, and all it was Memento. It was the Premier League backwards. Right. Instead of going from game number 1 to game number 38, we'd start at 38, predict the Premier League. When you get towards the middle, you're reacting to the games in real time. And then when you get to the end, you're going, which games in like week 1 and week 2 could tell us anything, if anything can be taught in those first two games. Did that for a couple of seasons. And then after a while, it's like, how can we continue to do this? I like this idea. And then the idea was telling the story through the players. And could we tell the players' careers backwards? But what players would you pick? And then very quickly it became a case of like, I don't want to do the usual, like the 50 best players or the 45 best players, because those stories have been told over and over again.
Right.
And so it became a case of like, let's make it really hard for ourselves and pick clubs that people don't even remember were in the Premier League, and let's go from there. And it was a really good sort of process doing all that. And I pitched the book last year. And pitch publishing just said, and then from there it was like, we'll. It was a glorious process at times too, because obviously there are some clubs or a club at least, and some players that weren't in the podcast that are in the book.
Right. Yes. Okay. So how do you go about picking? I don't know, a player from Barnsley who how many seasons did they have in the Premier League? One. Right.
Yes. Well, this is the beauty of this, and what I mentioned earlier, which is that if you've only had one season, the scope is actually quite narrow.
Okay.
And you're looking at players where there are some clubs that you can't really divulge in one direction or another because they're in there for one season and they only have one really famous player. Other clubs, it become even harder where they're in the clubs, when they're in the Premier League for a couple of years, but they don't really have loads of players that you could pick from. Bournemouth were a good example of that, in that they've been in the Premier League for a few years, but like, who are you picking from Bournemouth that... And if you're picking a chapter, or if you're isolating a chapter or a story, when we did the podcast, it's like, can we do an hour and a half or however long we do about these players? Is their story wide enough? Is their story worth telling? And what you end up making compromises. Barnes is a really easy one to check off the list because they had Jan Arge Fjortoft, who also played for Swindon.
Right.
And then you've done Barnsley and Swindon straight away.
Nice.
And so some of them, it's a bit like easier than others. And it's the ones where you've got loads of players to choose from. Tottenham and West Ham were much harder than the likes of Bournemouth. And Huddersfield got a raw end of the deal, I'd like to point out. Derby got a raw end of the deal, I'd like to point out, because with Derby, it was the 11-point season. It was Robbie Savage. And that's how they get mentioned. And Huddersfield, for all the players that they over the course of their couple of seasons in the Premier League, it was Jason Punchin, who realistically has nothing to do with their story. But what he does illustrate is what happens when it all goes wrong. And he arrives just at the point where it all went wrong.
Yeah, there's some spectacular failures in the Premier League. The 11-point season, I'm not sure anyone will ever better that.
It can't be beaten. To go at 11 points. I think if you win one game, it throws the points per game out of whack.
Yeah, very true. Well, we'll see Derby ever make it back. They're still in existence, which was in doubt for much of the past year or so. So, I mean, do you have a favourite player or a favourite game or a favourite moment from the last 30 years or so?
I think, especially in terms of the book, I always gravitate towards Matt Holland.
Okay.
And it's purely because I loved that Charlton team. From Alan Kirbishley built a side that was like mid-table perfection. They could give anyone a game. They had a spattering of quality and very few real star players. But in that sort of 1.5 seasons where they threatened to burst through the ranks and become like a European contender, Scott Parker and Matt Holland, I think, played together for about a year, maybe slightly more, maybe slightly less. But they beat Chelsea 4-2 on Boxing Day. And I remember watching that game as a youngster, and it was an absolute annihilation. Charlton were amazing. 6 days later, Chelsea by Scott Parker. And I would argue that to the detriment of his career. He won loads. Yeah. He did whatever, but that game, what I saw from Charlton, it was the epitome of, this is the ceiling, you're never going to break through it. And obviously Chelsea and other clubs have done it before, and other clubs will continue to do it. But it was a distillation of a lot of different things. And I always think that, like, Matt Holland as well played over 100 games for Bournemouth, I think it was. Played over 100 games for Ipswich, played over 100 games for Charlton, captained all three. That famous interview that Harry Redknapp gave, where some West Ham fan accused him of just putting Frank Lampard in the team, and when he said Frank Lampard's going to be this, when he basically predicted Frank Lampard's career at the age of 16, Matt Holland was also sort of pointed at that time, and he just left to get game time, and those kind of stories of players making their own paths and forging their way and becoming sort of indelibly linked with a team that's not necessarily as fashionable as those at the top. And that's what I wanted to tell, those stories as well.
Okay. Yeah, the big fish, little pond, little fish in big pond story is common in the Premier League, isn't it? And or maybe less common than it used to be, because if you're a good player, you gravitate towards the top now because the money's so big. It's hard to turn it down. There's been a good interview this week in which I think the sporting director at Real Madrid was complaining that the Premier League is now hoovering up all of the players and no one else can compete. And financially, that's true, of course. So the next there you go. Next 30 years of the Premier League, will it still exist? Question one, post Super League and all of that. And what does it look like in the future? Will you be able to tell the story of the next 30 years of the Premier League?
There was a point when the Super League was kicking off where I did wonder whether this was going to be not just the first 30 years of the Premier League, this is going to be it sort of thing. And obviously a great example here is when I mentioned Oldham before, this idea of Gunnar Harler, play for Oldham, fantastic stalwart of his time, for one of the first foreign players. As I say foreign, I mean not British or Irish. 13 players on the opening day, and you go from that to this, and everything just. One of the things that I find fascinating as well is that the further back you go, and the book does go back further than 1992, 93. It's just a really nice, easy line to draw.
Yes, because you tell the story of the players from their sort of beginning of their career. And yeah.
Well, and also as well, that like stuff I didn't know about, the fact that like Swindon, they had their one season in the Premier League. They were relegated with conceding 100 goals. It was 42 games at the time, so obviously it's going to be very unlikely that record is going to get close to.
True.
But that they were promoted a couple of years before and were denied promotion because of irregularities. Had to admit to something of like 30 of 36, and they were relegated again from what would be now the Championship to League One. They appealed that and managed to sort of stay in what is now the Championship and come through. And basically, the more you scratch under the surface, the more there is everywhere across the board. And I wouldn't say this is a definitive list. I would just say this is a list.
Sure. Yes, I mean, imagine if anyone was to come up with 45 players to tell the Premier League story, it'd be they look very different, right? Everyone's got their personal favourite stories. Yeah, actually, the early 90s were probably when I went to the most football in my football watching career, if that's the thing, just because I had the time, teenager, able to get on a bus, go around the country, around Europe and stuff like that. So I have fond memories of the early 90s. But during lockdown, we actually, because there was no football on, first part of lockdown, we did a retrospective on a bunch of games and just did a game a week and looked at old games. And it's amazing the difference in the football from today. Even to the early 90s, football looks different than now.
One of the things that I've discovered, I thought I had this theory anyway. It's not so much a theory, it's just when you're watching games. The thing that fascinates me is when you watch... There's this clip of Ronaldo, original Brazilian Ronaldo, that appears every now and then on Twitter. And he's playing an UEFA Cup game in 1998, and it looks like it's filmed a million years ago.
Right.
Pitch is bad, the TV cameras, the quality of that is bad. And I feel like the first 10 years of the Premier League are an era unto itself, and then everything speeds up so rapidly. Between 1999 and 2004, the game just accelerates at a level that I can't really fathom, to be honest. And since then, it's only ever moved ever quicker.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's quick, but also technically much better now. I mean, I don't know whether football's better for all the changes, honestly. The money and the glamour and the globalization of it, and the fact that it's so much of football is about business now, and the fact that we talk about net spend on podcasts, and I have to talk about amortization and EBITDA and United's cash flow and all of that. I don't think it's better for that, but
the
it's
game
different.
Itself. Yeah,
the quality of the game is
yeah, that's what I mean. And the fact that we as fans of whatever clubs you support up and down the 92, I remember very sort of early on just thinking, I'm a fan of a football team. I watch that football team. That's it. And then when you very quickly have to go to like, and also as well, like the whole buying players, selling players, it was just a joy to watch. Now you have to just go, oh, well, you have to do the maths of it.
Yeah.
And it makes it very robotic, and football is not robotic. Football is emotional and full of, at least what I believe anyway, not necessarily ones and zeros. And that's when you get down into the roots of then you sort of dullify it. It dulls the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, no, I agree. I mean, even this week, United bought Casemiro from Real Madrid and 5 European Cups. A great player. Should be very excited about it, but I couldn't help but go, hang on a minute. 70 million euros, 30-year-old, 300 grand a week. This doesn't add up financially. And why should, as a fan, I care about that? But unfortunately, football's so much of a business now that it's you start thinking, well, my team's going to be affected by this down the line because of all the money. Anyway, I wanted to get onto some of the United players you talk about here, because it's an interesting group. So 4 from United: Wayne Rooney, Edwin van der Sar, Paul Ince, Ashley Young. Of course, they all played for a number of Premier League clubs through their career, but all sort of indelibly linked with United as well. And I mean, I guess you can't tell the story of the Premier League without telling the story of Wayne Rooney and that goal on his debut for Everton. I think it was his debut, or yeah. So
I think he played maybe a game or two before. It might have been his first start. It might not have been, but everyone knows the goal you mean.
Yeah. Turns on his right foot, puts it in the top corner past David Seaman, the Arsenal keeper. But he's the story of the Premier League in many ways, isn't he? Wayne Rooney, coming to for when was it? Like 2000? When was that? 2003? 2?
Yes.
Yeah.
Wayne Rooney is a fascinating case study in any number of ways, because I mentioned about it's important which players you pick and for why. And if you were to say there's one flaw in this book in terms of trying to cover everything, there isn't a real solid connection with the 1999 Manchester United treble. Everything else, I think, is in there. But the problem with that is that there are so many players within that Manchester United side that the story is the same. Or you can't connect it loosely to other things. Or it's been told over and over again so no one else needs to hear it. Rooney's story, on paper, should also fit into that category. But fortunately, it doesn't. And I was intrigued by the reasons as to why England's all-time top goal scorer, Manchester United's all-time top goal scorer, is not held in the same regard as so many other players.
It's interesting that, because I think for the last 3 or 4 years of his time at United, we spent a lot of time moaning about him on this podcast, because physically he had degraded so much that it affected his performances. So in a sense, there was always the kind of passion and desire. In the first season that Moyes was at United, that disaster of a season where everything went wrong, and it's still David Moyes' fault to this day. It's not, but it's partly. He was United's best player that season, and it wasn't really for quality anymore, but just for effort and desire. And he never lost that, but he lost the physical side of his game quite early on. And he could still be playing now. Ronaldo's playing now. He's
older than him as well, which is fascinating.
Yeah.
I think when we did the podcast about Wayne Rooney, and he opened the series as well as opened the book, at the time, so you're thinking about 3 years ago, he played somewhere about 10,000 more minutes than James Milner.
Right.
And so that, to me, always was a point of these players, when they come through so young, how are they utilised and how are they leaned upon in such a way? And also as well, I think that when it comes to Rooney, the sort of the brush that he was tarred with was that Everton goal was his peak, but it should never have been his peak. That should have been the baseline. It was always, what can we get more? And I also think fundamentally, when you consider what he actually won for Manchester United, it was never that was the issue. It was always the fact that he would never drag England through whatever they were going through. And that's unfair, really. I can always pin it back to those comments he made in South Africa in 2010, when he pointed to the camera and said, the fans, nice to see the fans booing you, words to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. And I agreed with him then, and I agree with him now. And it became such a story of, and you see it so often, of he should not be held up for England's shortcomings, but that became his reputation.
Yeah, interesting. Edwin van der Sar, who of course, you look back on his career, Champions League winner with Ajax, Juventus for some reason didn't work out for him, and then he went to Fulham.
Yeah.
And he's obviously far too good to be at Fulham. far too good, but he did. And he could have gone to United in that summer. Ferguson came out with this not that long ago, and he'd a man of his word, he'd shook hands on going to Fulham, and so started his career in the Premier League at Fulham.
And fundamentally as well, this is what I said to you about connective tissue. That's why he's in the book for Fulham, because he, not completely and not on his own, legitimised them as a Premier League club, but they'd been this club that had a lot of money coming up from League One into the Championship and then into the Premier League. They seemed destined for the Premier League for quite a while, given the amount of money they had at the time and the way they were sort of spending just in that summer. Steve Marley, Steve Bronk, Jean Tigner with the manager. It was a completely fresh approach and an interesting period in the Premier League history, because you had the first 10 years where just the same old faces, and Fulham were part of this sort of, they're new.
Yeah.
And Van der Sar legitimised them from the point of, they're not just new, flavour of the month. They're actually legitimate in terms of a football team. He came in, he did what he does, stayed the length of his contract, established Fulham as part of everything else that's going on there in the Premier League, and then moved on to Manchester United and Old Trafford at a point where Alex Ferguson was sort of tinkering with the 1%, and he knew that with that particular 1% that he could build a side that would challenge at the very top of Europe.
Yes. I mean, United lost Schmeichel in 99, which you mentioned in your piece on Van der Sar, and then from 99 to when Van der Sar joined United, it was this period, horrible period from a goalkeeping point of view. Roy Carroll and Tim Howard and Massimo Taibbi and Barthez, and none of them really succeeded.
It was funny because there were, and from my own perspective, I can fully much attach myself to this. Obviously, I'll mention at some point who I support, but I'm not a Manchester United fan. But this was latched upon with great glee from everyone that wasn't a Manchester United fan, because it felt like between Schmeichel and at that point that, Fergie's got a weakness with goalies. He can't get another goalie. This is his one Achilles heel. And then as soon as Van der Sar comes in, it's like, he's fixed that then.
Yeah. You talk about Paul Ince, who has an interesting reputation with Manchester United fans. I mean, so obviously a great player for United, and after coming from West Ham, and really part of that first group that took United to the title. And I think he joined the season before, didn't he, if I remember correctly? And really influential player, and then sold in the summer of 95 alongside Mark Hughes and Andrei Kanchelskis, was it? Anyway, Ferguson broke that team apart in order to incorporate the class of 92 and all those players. But so sometimes Paul Ince and how good he was is forgotten in all of that. But he really was a very good player. And that early 90s midfield of Keane and Ince, as hard as it gets, basically.
Well, he's said himself, and I know Paul Ince is never one for talking himself down, but he's basically said that he is the class of 92. And I can kind of see that point, because if you don't have that initial success, you don't have the room to integrate. They would have come through regardless, but I don't think it's as sort of seamless if you are... We know it now. It's the same as in 1992 as it is today. It's easier to bring kids into the side when you are or have established some traditions of winning. And the first couple of years with Paul Ince and then Paul Ince and Roy Keane, the bedrock's laid in, and then you can, with the talent that's coming through, Ferguson just goes all in on it. But yeah, it's a part of that sort of double-edged sword of the game against West Ham, where Blackburn won the league, and the FA Cup final. I think if one of those had got through, he might not have been sold, but he was basically just sort of, okay, yeah, no, I'm going to change direction now. And obviously there's all sorts of things and what was said about between Paul Ince and Alex Ferguson.
Yeah.
And the interesting thing that I found was when Paul Ince manager came back as a manager of Blackburn, and basically all the interviews around that are around burying the hatchet, and there's no real grudge there so much. And I actually think, and this is said in the book, that for Ferguson to isolate him and to say the things that he said is actually a big compliment, because if he was nothing, if he was a nobody, he wouldn't have said anything.
True. I mean, Ferguson's not one to accept challenge to his authority, and I think there was some of that as well. And I mean, we've seen that over and over again with Ferguson.
Well, that happened at Paul Ince. The time he came back into England, he was basically kicked out of Anfield for very similar things.
Yes. Yeah, he celebrated a goal for Liverpool with such gusto that I don't think many United fans will forget or forgive that. And then he turned into this weird sort of rent-a-gob in the media after that, giving quotes about Manchester United's failure. Although there are many players who do that, paid or unpaid. And then the final of the quartet of United players you look at is Ashley Young, who's... I mean, he stayed for a very long time at United, and I guess it was successful in so far as he won plenty of stuff, and then, or did he win plenty of stuff? Yeah, I guess he must have.
Early.
Early. And then became a sort of jobbing fullback after that, and became a symbol of United not being able to actually purchase a decent player at right back or left back. But interesting career, very lengthy career, and still playing. He's still at Villa now.
Well, he's, again... I was more interested in his story at Watford because in Watford's history, there's the other Watford player in there is Aurelio Gomez. He has a story of like sort of coming in at Tottenham, bombing out, and then rebuilding a reputation.
Yes.
Young is quite similar in a sense that he was released from the Watford Academy for being too small, and it's a story of how that was a part of English football for quite some time, still is to a certain degree, managed to work his way back in at Watford through sheer persistence, went to Villa at a time where they were challenging to try and break into the Big Four, and it was a sort of thankless task really what Martin O'Neill's Aston Villa side had at the time, given the fact that Liverpool, Manchester United, Arsenal and Chelsea were two of those, well I say three of those four were almost Champions League semi-finalists every year. And then when he goes into Manchester United, he arrives at a time where they basically break Arsenal in terms of the 8-2. And then the longer he stays at the club, he becomes a sort of de facto representation of how far the club has fallen, in that he's the same player, but his role in the side gets more and more important to the point he's captain. And he's one of the few players, when you look around after about 3 years, it's like, oh, he knows what it's like to win titles because he was there under Fergie, and there's no one else that's there. And it's not a reflection of who he is as a person, who he is as a footballer, because then he goes to Italy and becomes, I think, the first player to win the Premier League and Serie A. It was just a snapshot in time as to what was going on at Old Trafford.
Yes, not the cause of United's problems, but felt like he was part of it sometimes, at least towards the end. Yeah. Anyway, a fascinating book and nice concept to tell the story. It was out this summer, I think.
Yes, it's been out for a couple of weeks now. You can get it. Yes, hardback and ebook.
Alrighty. Pitch Publishing, who've kind of cornered the market in sports stuff, haven't they?
Yes.
Used to be very niche and now do a lot. I think co-host of this podcast, Wayne Barton, has published some on Pitch as well. I might be totally wrong about it. He's done so many books now I forget where they're all at. Anyway, great book, Stuart. Fascinating concept and good to talk to you about it. Anyway, I thought we'd close with the reveal. You said you'd tell us who you're a fan of. Is it Birmingham or Villa?
Oh, that's a good question because it's neither of those. I'll leave it a little bit more mystic because you're going to have something to say. Rumour has it you played them this week and rumour has it you won.
Oh, no. Yeah. Oh, no. If I'd known that, actually, we've had Liverpool fans on here before.
This is why I found it really interesting in the first instance to write about Wayne Rooney, because from my perspective, he's the devil's a bit harsh. But, like, it was so fascinating to go back and watch, and I think I've been sort of had some sort of closure and catharsis over what's happened with us over the last few years. But I think he's such an underrated footballer, and it's insane watching it back now. But yeah, like for the uninitiated, I am a Liverpool fan, and yeah, it's still fascinating to go back and look at the story of Manchester United over the last 30 years, and also the story of us, and so much of everything else. One thing I realised in the process of writing this book is that every fan base exists within its bubble, and every bubble thinks it's better than every other bubble.
Yeah, of course. Well, congratulations on your one Premier League title. It was a long time coming, and maybe a long time until the next one comes too. Stuart, thank you very much, and pleasure to have you on the pod.
Cheers. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Alrighty, thanks everyone. Backers, stay tuned. We're going to chat about the weekend's Premier League.